A judgment against an out-of-state defendant is void without proper jurisdiction. The 14th Amendment Due Process Clause limits state court power. A court must possess personal jurisdiction over the defendant for a binding judgment. Personal jurisdiction is satisfied only by sufficient minimum contacts with the forum state. This requirement ensures traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice. The landmark case of International Shoe established this minimum contact standard. The analysis uses a two-part test for constitutional validity. First, the defendant must have relevant contacts with the forum. Second, the exercise of jurisdiction must be reasonable. The contacts must also comply with the state's long-arm statute. Most long-arm statutes extend jurisdiction to the constitutional limit. If the state statute is narrower, the statute controls the jurisdictional reach. Courts always apply the state statute first before the constitutional test. Understanding these rules prevents costly litigation errors. Minimum contacts fundamentally requires purposeful availment by the defendant. The defendant must voluntarily reach out to the forum state. The contact must be deliberate, not accidental or unilateral by the plaintiff. Purposeful availment means the defendant benefits from the forum state's laws. The defendant also benefits from participating in the forum state's economy. The defendant must have clear notice of being hailed into court there. Contacts are assessed based on their quality and nature, not just their quantity. The defendant must have created a substantial connection with the forum state. Mere foreseeability that a product might end up in the forum is insufficient. If the defendant only places goods into the stream of commerce, purposeful availment is generally lacking. The defendant must actively seek to serve the market in that specific state. This deliberate targeting is essential for establishing jurisdiction. Specific jurisdiction exists when the claim arises directly out of the defendant's contact. The cause of action must relate to the defendant's deliberate activities in the forum state. The contact must be the proximate cause of the injury giving rise to the suit. Alternatively, the contact must be the but-for cause of the injury. Specific jurisdiction is the primary application of the purposeful availment test. Examples include contracting to supply goods or services within the state. Committing a tortious act causing injury within the state also supports specific jurisdiction. Even a single, substantial contact can support jurisdiction. This applies if the claim is directly related to that specific contact. The court must analyze the relationship between three elements. These elements are the defendant, the forum, and the litigation itself. This ensures fairness when jurisdiction is based on limited activity. The stream of commerce doctrine governs jurisdiction over manufacturers of distant products. Merely placing a product into the stream of commerce is insufficient for purposeful availment. Knowing the product might end up in the forum is only mere foreseeability. The Supreme Court case Asahi Metal Industry Company requires something more than foreseeability. The defendant must intend to serve the market in the specific forum state. Examples of something more include advertising in the forum state. Establishing distribution channels there also qualifies. Providing customer service or advice in the forum is another example. The Supreme Court split on the exact standard in J. McIntyre Machinery Limited versus Nicastro. The prevailing view requires evidence of targeting the specific forum market. Targeting demonstrates the necessary deliberate connection to the state. General jurisdiction allows a court to hear any claim against the defendant. This applies even if the claim is unrelated to forum activities. General jurisdiction requires contacts that are continuous and systematic. These contacts must render the defendant essentially at home in the forum state. For individuals, the forum is the state of domicile. For corporations, the forum is the state of incorporation. The principal place of business is also a basis for general jurisdiction. The Supreme Court severely limited this scope in Daimler AG versus Baumann. Continuous business operations alone are now insufficient for general jurisdiction. The contacts must be truly exceptional to justify jurisdiction outside the home states. A corporation is not subject to general jurisdiction in every state. Substantial business activity in a state does not automatically create general jurisdiction there. The at-home standard is a high threshold for plaintiffs to meet. If minimum contacts are established, the court must assess reasonableness. The exercise of jurisdiction must not offend traditional notions of fair play. It must also satisfy substantial justice. 5 factors determine this reasonableness assessment. The primary factor is the burden placed upon the defendant. The forum state's interest in adjudicating the dispute is also considered. The plaintiff's interest in convenient and effective relief is a third factor. The interstate judicial system's interest in efficiency is relevant. Finally, the shared interest of the states in furthering substantive social policies matter. Modern transportation and communication significantly reduce the burden on defendants. If purposeful availment is strong, the reasonableness factors rarely defeat jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is only defeated if the burden on the defendant is constitutionally severe. This second prong serves as a safety valve for extreme cases. Jurisdiction can be established without relying on minimum contacts. Physical presence in the state when served with process is sufficient. This is known as tag jurisdiction. The duration of the defendant's stay is irrelevant under Burnham v. Superior Court. Consent also establishes jurisdiction over the defendant. Consent often occurs through a valid forum selection clause in a contract. A defendant may also consent by appointing an agent for service of process. Personal jurisdiction is a waivable defense. The defendant must raise the lack of personal jurisdiction promptly. This defense must be included in their first responsive pleading. Alternatively, it must be raised in a Rule 12 motion. Failure to raise the defense permanently waives the objection.